50 and 100-meter freestyle champ, Nathan Adrian, heading to his third Olympic Games. Nathan, to start us off, maybe just kind of recap from your perspective how things went this week.
Things went well. We came in here with a goal to put some guys on the Olympic team, and I think we achieved that goal.
Okay. Go ahead and take a few questions. Just raise your hand. We'll get you a mic. Dan and then Karen.
All right, Nathan, can you talk a little bit about the dynamic that you have with Anthony and Cullen? And it seems like, especially in the 50, there's just three of you that are so elite. There's always one person that's a little left out. But you're also so much older than a lot of the sprinters, and you've kind of been able to hold the younger kids off, which is not the case in all the events. Can you just talk about how you guys are able to do that, and also just the dynamic between the three of you?
Well, I mean, the dynamic's great. I mean, I think Anthony and Cullen are two of just the nicest, most genuine guys that I know. I mean, you'd struggle to find anybody who has anything bad to say about those guys. So, it's hard. Olympic trials is like, I guess I forget about it, but how difficult it is to, because you want to see your friends do well, and here we are, and you have to compete against them, because that's the nature of the game. And I love to see when those guys do well, but I also train really hard to try to swim fast to represent Team USA. And if there's three of us there, one of us has to be left out. So that's I guess we all have a pretty good common understanding of that, and despite that, we can still be pretty good friends outside the pool. Oh, being older, yeah, we are that. Well, I think the 50 certainly has. There's a couple things. Maybe first of all, like strength is certainly a factor, and as you're older, we jokingly call it old man strength, but I mean it's a thing. And then also, I think just having the experience to know, how to perform at this kind of stage. At the 50 free final, we all three of us have been lucky enough to be on several national teams and in these kind of positions before. So, we kind of know what to expect and how to compete for these spots. So some of the younger guys, they got that experience through that event last night, and I'm sure next time that comes around, they'll be that much better.
Nathan, how much attention were you paying to the Olympics in 2000 when Anthony tied Gary Hall?
That was actually my first Olympics that I ever actually remember was 1996, but my first Olympics I paid attention to was definitely that team in 2000. And Tony was, I was a Gary Hall Jr. fan. Not to say that I wasn't an Anthony Irvin fan, but I was a young kid and I was really excited to see Gary do all the fun stuff that he was doing. But Anthony was certainly an inspiration to me in seeing what he did at such a young age. And at that point I was 8 years younger than him, and maybe that was one of the first times that I was like, putting the numbers together, saying, hey, how many seconds do I need to drop per year? At that point I could still drop a second per year. But what do I need to do in order to try to put myself in a position like he put himself in?
So if you grew up liking Gary Hall, have you ever been tempted to imitate any of his outlandish pre-race maneuvers?
No, because I think the cool thing about Gary and even with Tony is that they embrace who they are as individuals. And for me to do anything like that would be me imitating Gary, and not be me being me. So that's I think we're gonna have to wait a little longer until we get another true showman like a Gary Hall Jr.
Nathan, I think for the last 6 summer games, the U.S. has won more swimming medals than any other country. I wonder what dynamic that brings to the team with expectations and knowing that it's been, such a big part of the Olympic experience and success for so long.
Yeah, there's always going to be a couple different ways to approach that with a team as big as Team USA, right? And that some people react to having those expectations in a positive way, and they can use that as motivation. I think Michael's a guy who can deal with expectations better than literally anybody in the world. And then there's some other people who don't necessarily latch onto that, and they take that as maybe a little bit more anxiety. So I think we're going to have to navigate how we how we present this to people, and if I think guys like just because I know him from practice every day, a guy like Brian Murphy. I mean, he's a guy who knows how to step up to the plate, and we can say, hey man, like Team USA could really use some medals out of you, and he'd be like, right on, let's go, let's do this. So that's I don't know, I love it. And really it is. It's not something that we're it's in our face, but it's something that I love to track, just because it's Team USA, and it's swimming at the Olympics, and it's something that I certainly take pride in, being part of USA Swimming.
Karen?
Nathan, it used to be that the 50 and 100 were definitely the glamour events of swimming. Do you feel that that's at all changed during Michael's reign, since those weren't the events that he won the gold medals in?
That's a good question, and I don't necessarily. I think maybe 50 and 100 are still where they were before, but Michael's elevated the other events to just something that's incredible, and because he can do what he can do, So I know it's. I know certainly a lot of French people will be watching that 50 free final. I know certainly a lot of Australian people will be watching that 100 free final. So this is, on a world stage, I think the 50 and the 100 are certainly still pretty big events.
Karen and then Barry.
I'll follow on that. So in some respects, do you think your renown might be more in France and Australia, because they are way more interested in your events than maybe people in the United States?
I think that's a matter of statistics and how you count them, because the U.S. has a pretty big population. If you take, percentage of population, maybe it would be bigger over there. But, we have I think people are really excited about the Olympics, so if you look at total viewership, you'd see maybe it's in the United States' favor. I don't know. Name recognition. I don't know. It's not something I try to pay attention to. So I couldn't give you a good answer. Sorry.
Are you fairly comfortable you'll be able to drop time in both events, and do you think you'll need to medal?
That's been the plan, but that's not saying that things haven't gone to plan before, right? But certainly the goal coming into this meet was to go some times that were good enough to make the team, and then still have a little left to go a little faster. And we looked at our races, and we've kind of figured out the different avenues, I think, that we want to clean up, and where we want to get faster. So yeah, I mean, I would be lying. Who wants to sit here and be like, well, that's all I got? Let's go. Let's get faster, and then let's try to be better.
Got time for a couple more.
Do you have any sense of all of how Katie might be making distance freestyle cooler than it was before? Any evidence?
Totally.
What kind?
Yeah, I mean, we just all love to watch her swim. I think that's one of those events that you look at the back of your credential, and you're like, oh sweet, like the 400 freeze today, like I'm gonna make a point to check it out. Or in the warm down pool, you can see the you can see the screen up there, so you certainly you just know something special is there's always something special that could happen if Katie jumps in the water.
Was there a time you would not maybe pay as close attention to the longer races?
Well, if there's certainly a Team USA athlete in there that was a medal contender, I think I almost always pay attention unless it's like the 800 free is a little tough because it's like I think it's right, like literally right before the 50. So that one is a little tough, and that will always be tough for me. But if there's not Team USA person in there and they're not in a race to snag one of those medals, then maybe not as much. So that's certainly something that she's had a big impact on.
Go ahead, Mike.
Nathan, if I remember correctly, you had a very strong distance background at one time, so I can't believe you didn't pay some attention to distance events.
I mean, yeah, certainly. I certainly understand the grind. It's been over 10 years now, I guess, since I've been doing that stuff. So yeah, that is long enough for me to maybe forget what the pain feels like and to understand what some pretty serious acidosis feels like from producing lactic acid. But no, I mean, don't for a second think it's me saying I don't appreciate distance events. I mean, it's all family, right? It's all swimming, and it's fun to see different guys doing what they do best. And I love watching. Connor is actually one of my favorite racers to watch. I mean, I think him and Katie actually have just the same absolute just racer mentality. At the end of the race, they're never going to give up, and that's one of the coolest things to watch, is because you can feel that and you can see that, and you can see that through their training and then how it manifests itself in their race, and that's I don't know, I really enjoy watching that.
Thanks, Nathan.
Thank you
Appreciate
guys.
your time.